Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Leveraging Cloud 2.0 for Agile, Accurate, and Actionable Business Intelligence. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speakers are Shaun Rogers, VP of Research at Enterprise Management Associates, and Brad Peters, CEO and co-founder at Birst. Shaun has more than 19 years of hands-on IT experience with a focus on Internet-enabled technology. In 2004, he co-founded the BI Network and held the position of Executive Vice President and Editorial Director. Shaun guided the company's international growth strategy and helped the BI Network grow to 18 websites around the world. Brad has spent the last 10 years building analytic products and solutions. Prior to working at Birst, he helped found and later led the analytics product line at Siebel Systems. Recognizing the limitations of enterprise analytics offerings and the revolutionary power of cloud technologies, Brad founded Birst in 2005. And before I hand things over to today's speakers, I did want today's audience to know that Brad and Shaun will be dedicating the conclusion of this event to answering your questions, so we do encourage you to log those at any time throughout the course of the presentation by using the Q&A functionality located in the right-hand column of your screen. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow, which will include the on-demand playback as well as a PDF of the speaker slides. So be on the lookout for that. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Shaun Rogers. Shaun?
Thanks, Raleigh. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Birst for making today's presentation available to the audience. I think this is a great topic and one that I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of research on, and it's a segment of our business intelligence industry that is really maturing and really moving quite quickly right now, which I think opens up an awful lot of opportunities for people that are looking for unique and innovative ways to solve their business intelligence issues. So I love the title, Leveraging Cloud 2.0 for Agility and Accuracy and Actionable Business Intelligence. And this is sort of the mantra that we're kind of seeing around the space now of the leaders in the market are enabling their customers on all three of these fronts. So, and that's going to be sort of the cornerstone of my conversation today, is sort of just kind of discussing why cloud's ready for prime time. It had some bumps along the way early on. There was challenges to issues of security and performance and so on. And the cloud vendors in the market have done an excellent job of addressing and making changes in the landscape, as well as maturing their offerings to meet sort of this customer-driven demand for better or higher levels of execution. And the areas that I've seen this happening when we talk to end users is, the platforms that we're seeing now in the space have become very feature-rich. Early platforms were struggling in that department. We're seeing some vendors really address and focus on things such as stronger analytics. And they're addressing these challenges head on by bringing in, really meaningful features and abilities to their platforms to address the needs of their end users. And certainly by doing so, they've created or helped spur along the adoption that we've seen in the market. So, it's hard now to talk to an enterprise customer or even an SMB client who doesn't have cloud somewhere in their ecosystem, and many of them, of course, have it in their analytics and their BI. Agility, accuracy, actionable. It's nice alliteration, but at the same time, I think all three of those topics for today's conversation, carry a lot of weight. Being agile is important, and some cloud solutions have done a good job there, others haven't. The issue of accuracy, understanding your data, and being able to make smart decisions is also something that's been a bit of a hurdle in the space, although some have addressed it quite well. And, ultimately, we need this insight so that we can make decisions, take action on behalf of our business. And I think that this is also very important, and it's something that we're seeing maturing in the space. Another area that I've noticed that I think has really helped kind of supercharge things in the cloud BI space is the pure play vendors. I've been a fan of most that I've seen in the market, and I think one of the opportunities that the pure plays have is they don't have to drag along a traditional solution and try to retrofit it for the web. They got to take advantage of sort of a new opportunity in our space, and they purpose-built solutions to address issues long-term, such as agility and accuracy and actionable type features. They, to me, very much modeled themselves after other sort of innovative changes we've seen in our business intelligence and even our data warehousing landscape over the last 2 decades. I saw this with the data quality vendors early on, where they were very innovative and they helped kind of change the face of how we were dealing with data quality a handful of years ago. We've seen Discovery BI be somewhat disruptive in the space. We've seen mobile be disruptive, and ultimately it gets down to smaller companies doing really smart things and being highly innovative and taking advantage of pain points in the industry, and I think that that's one of the things pure play vendors sort of bring with them. Kind of switching gears a little bit, I look at a lot of different metrics that are important when we look at technology, and this list spanning from pricing and total ownership costs and all the way down to vendor strength comes from a checklist that I use with my customers when I'm helping them understand who they might want to work with in a market. And one of the things that we've seen that's really kind of brought Cloud 2.0 to a head is that many vendors in this space are offering or have found ways to offer solutions in all of these areas. So, pricing has become important, and we're seeing the vendor community take a more flexible approach to this. It's not just the opportunity to buy a license with a seat. We're seeing some very innovative pricing models out there that have helped move us closer to this maybe Cloud 2.0 sort of BI world. Architectures have improved, technologies have improved, and as I mentioned before, we're no longer sitting in this sort of 70-30 space where, we can't get our hands on that last 30% of features that we might have had in a traditional solution. Now cloud providers are, running neck and neck with the desktop providers when it comes to features, and they're delivering exactly the type of tools that are expected from traditional users as well. Service management's been a big issue, whether or not you have the capability to address enterprise needs with service level management and service level agreements, and can you meet the critical components of an enterprise solution and support an enterprise customer. And maybe early on with cloud, some vendors struggled there. Now we see the innovative vendors really addressing this area. Transparency of communication. I'm a big fan of this. We're seeing improvement in that space. There's been some fairly well-documented cloud failures over the last couple of years, and the transparency side of cloud is becoming, I think, something that most vendors can count on. Having clear, concise communication with cloud vendors is certainly important. Openness of these platforms, having access to APIs, being able to share data from on-premise to cloud and vice versa, being able to share data or information between cloud applications is becoming very important as companies put more apps in the cloud. So all of these things, once again, are kind of showing how things have matured in the space. Security was once a huge point of conversation when we discussed cloud or cloud BI, and frankly, it's kind of gone to the wayside now. Most vendors have come to the market and been able to prove that, look, our centers that are holding onto your data oftentimes are more secure than the center that you're using. So I find that to be the truth quite often from my end users. When they go to tour a cloud facility, they walk out thinking, gosh, I wish our systems were that well maintained and secure in their facilities. And last but not least is vendor strength, which is something that I look at. The pure play folks that I was praising a few minutes ago, a lot of them were small startup companies, and the great part now is they've blossomed. They've been in the market for years. They're serving enterprise customers, and their strength as a vendor has really matured and stepped up over the last few years, causing or releasing or eliminating levels of risk for enterprise customers who wanted to work with them. There's still some large roadblocks out there that I personally see in the vendor space, and I hear it from the end user space. There's still quite a lot of challenge around being innovative, being smart around data integration. There's not a lot of companies that have solved that issue of helping move data when it needs to move between the cloud, between on-premise and hybrid type situations, and that's certainly something that we'll continue to see some work on and innovation on. Well, I mentioned that analytic power is improving, and so have the features. Some, I think you will find, some platforms have much more power than others. There are some vendors, I think, that are a tad behind in the market in addressing this as an opportunity to better serve their customers, and I think that we'll see continued growth around analytic power moving forward. Last but not least is implementation speed and cost. One of the big promises of cloud was that implementation could happen overnight, and I think there was a fair amount of disillusionment in many project managers who took their first BI project to the cloud and couldn't find the tools that they expected to support that particular value proposition. So implementation speeds for many vendors continue to be an issue. We find that a lot of folks advertised their solutions as simple and fast, and it ended up being slow and requiring extra professional services to get the job done. And those are things that are certainly slowing penetration and adoption down. So there are a few big roadblocks out there, but that list that's above these three are areas that I think has really kind of catapulted us forward into a cloud 2.0 sort of atmosphere. And we're starting to, of course, see BI deployment on the cloud grow. We just recently did some research with readers here at EMA, found that 41% of the folks that we're talking to have already implemented an enterprise BI or data management system in the cloud. You can see the departmental numbers are pretty strong as well. For those of you wondering about prototyping, of course, is a great way to use cloud technology to reduce risk. We see that the EMEA market does that much, much more than the American or North American markets. The North American markets are moving towards a more sophisticated utilization of cloud BI. They're demanding more advanced analytics, and our research here at EMA indicates that a lot of the folks that fall into that category are looking to even do things as sophisticated as predictive analytics and, of course, data mining through the cloud. So when we look at cloud technology from an adoption standpoint, there's a bunch of different folks that are kind of pushing things forward. In this particular case, we're kind of looking at the leading drivers from a business perspective. Business people are enamored with the cloud still because they can reduce operational and capital costs. They're looking for a way to also improve IT service quality. They want to, oftentimes these projects are ways to not have to stand in line with IT and to get your project stood up a little faster or run a little bit better. And that's sort of the things that are driving them towards cloud business intelligence as a solution. EMA research sort of backs this up, as you can kind of see the numbers that equal the commentary that I was just giving. And it's not surprising. If you're in a line of business role, saving costs, saving operational and capital expense is certainly something that you're going to pay attention to. And if you can do it well, implementing quickly and improving the overall support you get from IT, it's certainly something that you would be interested in. On the other side of this equation, IT still plays a big role here. It's difficult to put a mature business intelligence cloud solution into the enterprise without the help and support of IT stakeholders. And IT takes a different look at this, and they still do, of course, show concern and around security and risk and compliance issues. They certainly, and especially if you have data that's highly regulated, this is an area that they certainly want to take a look at. They're very interested in the management of these platforms and their performance capabilities, and of course, back to the ease of implementation that I discussed earlier. I think IT is pretty sensitive to all three of these, but I think the market is meeting them with solutions that really answer these questions. Once again, just a little bit of a look at how these numbers came across when we polled our audience on this particular topic. So different drivers are causing both sides of the fence, line of business and IT, to kind of come together over these topics. And we're seeing that a more mature vendor community is able to really stand up and meet a lot of these demands. And, with that said, for my angle, it kind of, I hope, casts a good picture of where we're at from an adoption standpoint, where there's still opportunity with those three larger roadblocks for some companies. But the bottom line is our research for adoption and the things that we're seeing change in the cloud market for BI right now is astounding. And we've definitely moved towards a more agile and actionable and accurate environment from some vendors who are able to meet these new demands of cloud kind of 2.0, and I find that pretty exciting. So I'm going to give the mic now to my friend Brad Peters, and he's going to tell you a little bit about Birst, and then as Raleigh promised, we'd love to answer questions at the end. As a matter of fact, I've got questions for Brad that I'm going to pose as well. So Brad, you're up, and I'll let you take the podium.
Thanks, Shaun. I appreciate it. So for those folks on the webinar here, it's probably a good little bit of background information just to get to know Birst a little bit better. We've been around for a number of years. Our mission's always been to bring the agility of cloud to the world of BI, and we've been doing that for some time. We've been growing quite quickly over the last several years, and actually at this point we've got multiple thousands of organizations that are actually using Birst in production today. Just to give folks a little bit more information about our customer base and who we are. A lot of customers in multiple different segments. We serve a couple of different areas. One of the original places that folks associate cloud with is the mid-market, mid-sized organizations, and Birst has a number of customers in that area. We also service many larger organizations as well. And to Shaun's earlier point about where cloud and cloud BI are going, I think the maturation of the technology, I think the maturation of the culture around using cloud technologies has really caused a lot of organizations to think, instead of why would I go cloud, to now why wouldn't I go cloud? Why is there not a reason to do this? It's certainly in our interest to focus on our core competencies, not on infrastructure, and cloud provides a definite mechanism to do that. In fact, what we've seen over the last year and a half or so is in many segments of the market, actually a cloud-first mentality, which is great for us. We've been in this market for a long time, and we definitely did not see that a few years ago. So it's a nice thing to see. And then the other thing that we focus on is other software vendors or people who are providing software as a service or other cloud services, wanting to provide enhanced analytics and self-service reporting and analytics to their users, and Birst works with a number of leading cloud providers to do that. I think where a true analytics solution like Birst comes into play is when people want more than just static reporting. They want interaction, and they want users to be able to self-author. That's where Birst particularly plays. Historically, the market for BI and analytics and consumption of data for the business user has been an interesting market. The problem set is hard, as Shaun alluded to before. It's not like you can press one button and magically your BI instances are set up. Each one of these is a living, breathing instance of a living, breathing application, and they take some time to figure out. And so over the years, we've seen a couple of different approaches evolve towards solving for how do I get critical information to my business users. The first was really the strategy that's taken by legacy BI vendors, which is let's assemble a bunch of different technologies, generally through acquisition, to create a suite of products that could walk data from source applications to business users' dashboards. And there's a lot of functionality, a lot of great capability in those solution platforms. They tick every box on the analyst forums, but the challenge is there's a lot of assembly required, and a lot of that assembly is not value added to the business problem. It's just necessary work that's required over and over and over again. We're reinventing the wheel every time we build a project. And over the last half dozen or so years, or 6 or 7 years or so, I'd say, there's been a new camp of vendors that have said, well, let's just start with a more simplified problem. Let's start with a desktop problem, a few tables, a few things. Let's analyze on the desk, maybe even put that on a server. So let's try to make more containable problems much, much easier to solve. And I think we've seen the discovery vendors and self-analysis really take off in terms of a way for people to take at least a segment of the enterprise BI problem sets and make them significantly simpler. But there's been this choice between people wanting to solve a complete enterprise solution, but do it painfully, or solve something that is much more contained but much more quickly. And really the vision of cloud has always been to wrap the complexity of enterprise stacks with ease of use. And that's really been Birst's vision, is to bring the dexterity of cloud to those enterprise infrastructures. We believe fundamentally that a lot of those components that sit in these legacy solutions are fundamentally necessary. They do important things. They're just too hard to assemble, and cloud really provides a nice abstraction for pulling those pieces together. And that's really what Birst has been about. And if you think about what that means at a more detailed level, it's beyond just extracting data from source systems or presenting the pixels on the screen. It's arranging data, denormalizing it, setting it up such that you can aggregate it in the first place, creating dimensional models such that business users can ask really rich questions. It's giving an interface to business users such that they don't have to write SQL or create data sources that connect to servers and stuff like that, that really limits the audience. If the audience was strictly strictly analysts or power users or data scientists, that's one thing, but the broad-based business user doesn't want to be burdened with that. And so the traditional legacy suites provide all these functionalities, but each of these boxes is likely a different product. And then what we sought to do with Birst was to bring together the worlds of data management, building analytical data structures with that of creating semantic layers on top of it such that business users can consume the technology, then ultimately creating best-in-class pixels on the screen so that people can visualize, report on, and distribute that information. And that's really what Birst has been about. The core of our mission has been to use cloud to bring automation to the process of delivering BI. So if you think about BI, there's a lot of components that need to be pulled together, and our approach has really been to say, look, much of the data modeling piece, not all of it, but a reasonable piece of it, is around building common designs and reference designs for analytical data models. And that can be, to some extent, automated. We can bring automation to the process of data modeling for BI. And the process of physical construction of that, building that, making that a reality, putting that in a database and making that ready so that business users can ask those sophisticated multidimensional questions, those also evolve along very common design standards. There are standard books and practices and authors and whole religious camps about how all that is done. And as a result, those design patterns can be institutionalized and automated as well to a certain extent. It's not one button and everything happens, but certainly a lot of the rote infrastructure, the repeated processes that happen again and again and again with every construction of every BI project, a lot of that can be automated. And really our mission of Birst is to bring automation to the process of BI. And it really involves accessing data wherever it sits, whether it's connecting to data that may already sit in an existing data warehouse and not moving it to the cloud and just querying it where it sits, or loading data into the cloud such that we can turn it into a dimensional data structure, data mart, data warehouse, such that and bring data warehouse automation to the fore so that people can see across complex business processes. That's really been, again, our mission: data model automation and data mart automation. And we do this in the cloud. We also do this in private clouds as well. The benefits of multi-tenancy and the goodness of upgrade in place and all that doesn't necessarily have to exist purely in the public cloud. I think that's been a big debate out there. But Birst also provides its capabilities in an appliance form such that users can create their own private BI clouds. And that means one instance supporting many different BI utilization. So instead of having lots of different instances for dev, prod, UAT, and different applications, you can literally set up one multi-tenant instance yourself inside your firewall or outside your firewall, depending upon what your needs, and also leveraging cloud services for cloud-based data warehousing infrastructure as well. And in particular, Amazon Redshift, which has been a recent announcement of petabyte scale massively parallel data warehousing being offered at some pretty economical rates out there that Birst is fundamentally designed to work well with as well. So what we want to do is we want to give people the deployment flexibility, the implementation flexibility, so they can choose where they want their data, where they want the platform, and how they want to consume it, all the while bringing automation to the process of delivering BI. And ultimately what that gives is the power of legacy tools, but the agility of something that can be cycled much more quickly because many of the components are pre-wired together and pre-integrated. So with that, I think I'll turn this over to our friend Matt Train, who's going to give us a bit of a demonstration.
Okay, thank you, Brad. So just to emphasize everything that we've just talked about here today, I'm going to run through just a quick demonstration of Birst. We'll show the front end of Birst, the dashboards, first of all, and I'll just show you some of the features and functionalities there within the dashboards. And then I'm going to actually jump back and build out a data warehouse and build out a couple of dashboards quickly for you, just to demonstrate the power of Birst with both the back end and the front end. So I'm in a dashboard here in Birst, as you can see on the screen. And again, within Birst, this is just a very interactive environment. So we've got lots of metrics on the screen here. We've got some trending. We've got a donut chart. So the users are able to come in very easily, do some of the interaction that you see me doing here on the screen. We can do things such as selecting prompts, doing visual filters, as you can see here, even drilling down into the data, into the hierarchies of the data as we'd like to. We have quite a number of different visualization types as well. So in this case, you can see that we have a tree map. We can drill across on those charts if we'd like to, along with drilling down. Birst does deliver things such as Geo Maps as well. So in this case, you can see an image of the United States, and it is based on Bing Maps with the ability to do sort of a heat map look to this. And again, as we select do the visual filtering on the maps, the entire dashboard does update with you. Now I'll jump over to our product performance view here quickly. And within this view, you'll notice a couple of other different types of visualizations. Again, a heat map, as well as maybe a bubble chart that we can interact with. But an important point here to make within this dashboard is also the ability for the users to also create some of their own interactions and be able to dig deeper into the dashboards than just what's presented to them. So things such as very simply changing to different chart types, as well as going in and seeing the actual data. And then once they've seen the actual data, maybe drill into that data a bit. So for instance, maybe we'll go ahead and go into a pivot control and just pivot that data up just like you do in maybe Microsoft Excel. But the power of Birst also now allows you to go back into that data warehouse, back into the metadata, and begin to also add some additional metrics to that. So in this case, I'm adding some quantity, and maybe I'd want to add maybe days inventory on hand or something like that. Now, once I've done all of this, we do have the ability to export out to multiple different data types. We do have the ability to also do some scheduling. So for your end users, if they'd like to maybe email a view of this to themselves, maybe once a day or once a week or even once a month, they can do that as inline HTML or any of the other export types that you see here. And again, they can just very simply choose any day of the week here if they'd like to, or any day of the month even as well. Now, finally, with Birst, again, you've seen quite a few different visualization types here. But again, one of the things that definitely differentiates Birst is we're not just doing simple data discovery. We're also doing the pixel-perfect report. So these have been around for many years now, but they're still something that most of our customers need. They still need that production report, again, to come to their inbox, or the ability to maybe have a 100-page report that they can send out to a PDF or even Excel to do some further analysis in there as well. So now that we've actually seen the front end of Birst, let's actually jump to the back end and let's build out a quick data warehouse. So I'm going to go into another space, and our spaces are where we actually do build in these. We do put together these data warehouses, and within here we have an area called data flow, where you're going to be able to visualize the data that I'm going to send up into Birst. But the first thing I want to do, though, is I actually want to go over to Birst Connect, and this is the thing that allows us to get to the data internally to your network. So it basically allows us to go behind your firewall and grab some data. Now, in this case, I'm connecting to SQL Server, but we have quite a few other different databases that we're able to connect to, really any relational data source that you might have. And I'm going to connect to a database called Southwind very quickly. And let me just authenticate into that. And we'll just grab a few of the tables that I have in there. So I'm grabbing 6 of the tables. We could schedule this for uploading. We can do differential types of uploads as well, so we're not going to have to re-upload all of your data every single time. But in this case, I'm just going to very simply run that task. It's exporting the data out of my database. It is uploading into the Birst cloud at this point. It does get zipped up, and we do send it in a secure fashion into the cloud. Now, some other ways of getting data into the cloud as well. We can certainly do things such as uploading Excel. We can also do some connections to other cloud sources as well. So 2 of the native connectors for us are Salesforce and NetSuite, and then we do have some partners that allow us to connect to some other cloud sources along with that. Now, my data is still in the process of uploading, but it'll be finished here in just a second. There we go. So it's now completed. And now that that's complete, I am going to jump back over to data flow quickly. And you can now see those 6 tables that I did upload. So quickly, I'm just going to very simply enable these. When we initially bring those into the cloud, we bring those in there disabled, just to make sure you don't accidentally add some data into your data warehouse that you didn't mean to do. I've got those 6 tables. I'm just going to space those out here so that I can create some joins amongst them, and then also create that logical star schema off of that. So we'll go through the process of, again, just very simply creating joins between all of these. My order details and my orders, and this is just a set of grocery store data. And then from this, again, we've told Birst what the relationships are. You can see the cardinalities there. It knows the one-to-many relationships. Behind the scenes, Birst also understands that we have attributes, we have metrics or measures or facts in there as well. And so I'm going to now very simply tell Birst to go ahead and create a logical data mart off of this, or a logical data warehouse off of this. So Birst is going to go through, look at all of the attributes, look at all of the relationships, and we're now creating, again, these dimension tables for us, as well as the facts right here in the middle. Now from this, I can very simply go in and actually push that data into the data warehouse so that it is a logical data model. I don't now need to actually go in and create tables and load data myself by hand. Birst is going to handle all of that for me. It's going to do all of those load scripts and such behind the scenes so that I don't have to do that. Now, while that's happening, I am going to jump in and make a couple of additions to this. So we may want to add in some additional measures to this. So one of the things I don't have in this data set is revenue, so I'm just going to add a revenue calculation into that. We'll go ahead and select down to my lowest level here, and we'll bring in unit price, quantity, and discount. And we'll just very simply multiply all of those together. Now, in this case, this happens to be a calculation that's sitting in the metadata. Certainly, we could actually materialize this and actually push that into the data warehouse if we'd like to do that as well. I did mention the fact that we can do drill downs and hierarchies, so I can go and create a drill map off of this. And so very quickly, we'll create a drill map just for our product dimension, just so you can see how that works as well. So within the product dimension, whoops, the data warehouse is not quite built out yet, so let's just jump in here and wait for that to finish. There we go. So hopefully it should work for me here. Try that one more time. But within the data warehouse, you're always going to have the need to drill down. It looks like I might have caused a problem there, so we'll just go ahead and skip through that. But the idea there is essentially the ability to do your drill downs within there. Let me just try that one more time. Sorry about that. Just see if that picked it up here. All right, this is not my day. Sorry about that. Well, let's move on. So we'll jump over into our designer. But the idea there with the drill maps is the ability to do some drill downs from things like your product categories down into the products. And I'll actually show a good example of this in our time dimension, which we automatically generate those drill downs. So within here, though, again, I've jumped now into our designer, and this is where we actually build out our dashboards. So within Designer, you can see now over here on the left-hand side, that metadata was automatically generated for us when we generated that data warehouse. Now within our time dimension, again, at the very lowest level, we have dates in our data, but we automatically build out a time dimension for you. So you get things such as year, quarter, month, and certainly you can put in your own custom time dimensions as well if you'd like to do some sort of a fiscal time dimension or some sort of maybe a manufacturing type of a time dimension. Also, again, with our metrics, you can see here I've got quantity, and as I open this up, you'll notice that there are we can analyze this by multiple dates that's in the data, as well as the ability to do things such as averages, maxes, mins, and sums. And then again, with time, back to time again, we have time series measures. So we have maybe year-to-date information or maybe month ago or year ago sorts of information as well. So very quickly, I'm going to build out just a couple of views off of this data. And so I'll add my quantity out there quickly. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and add my categories out there. And also something from my time dimension. So we'll add something out here from the time dimension. Again, there's that ability to drill down in there. That is hyperlinked for us. So if I drill down in 2011, that does now take me to my quarter level, and then we can even go down to the month, down to the week level, and down to the day level. I'll just quickly undo that, though. And then once we've brought all of this in here as well, we can now do things such as being able to pivot this data up maybe, or maybe create some different visuals off of that data. So I'll go ahead and bring up that same pivot control that I had earlier. And I'm just going to grab my category name, just very simply drag and drop that out there to pivot that data up. Again, I can drill down in there. I can certainly add things such as summaries to this if I'd like to do that as well. I could also even go into my quantity maybe and maybe add some sort of a calculation, maybe a function to it. Maybe we need to multiply quantity by something else, or maybe you'd like to do some other sort of a function against that, including things like prompts or maybe string manipulation for the attributes and such. We'll leave that as is, though. And again, as I mentioned, we can quickly add just a quick view, maybe a quick bar chart to that if I'd like to, or maybe a pie chart. Or if I'd like to, I can even go in here to my chart properties. And we saw quite a few different visualization types available to us. And I'll just quickly scroll down. You can see all of those visualization types are available to you. And you can certainly do all sorts of different views on that. But we'll go ahead and change this over to a bar chart. And I'm going to quickly just hide that table behind there. Or below there, so that table will go away. And then I'm going to save this out as a chart. So quickly we'll just save this into a shared folder area so that anybody that has access to Birst into this space will be able to see this chart and will be able to see this dashboard. And then I'll create one more visualization off of that as well. Again, I showed a map earlier. kind of one of my favorite things to show. So again, we'll go back to our customers here. Let's add the state code for our customers. And again, we'll just very simply add quantity out there too. And so one more time, we'll go ahead and add a chart to this. And for this one, we'll go ahead and choose one of those Bing maps that are available to us. So we'll choose the state code and quantity. And then I just very simply need to tell it that we want to use U.S. states in this case. You can even upload your own KML files, your own custom files or custom maps for this if you'd like to use that as well. So we'll apply that, and we're going to have a map pop up here. And let's just close that out. And then again, we'll go to back to my options. Let's go ahead and hide that table one more time. And I'm now going to go ahead and save that map out there as well. So that map's now available to us, and now what we want to do is actually build out one of those dashboards. So quickly, I'll jump over to my dashboards. We are starting out with a blank dashboard again because this is a brand new space. So we'll go ahead and start to divide this up and give ourselves some places to drop in the various components that we have available to us. So I'm just going to create a couple of drop zones. We'll even go ahead and drop in a couple of prompts here as well. We'll go into my shared area. Let's grab that chart. We'll drag and drop that out there. And then let's grab that map as well. We'll drag and drop that out there as well. For our chart, let's just very simply enable some of those download options. Maybe some of we can also enable sort of the view selector, maybe my pivot control. So we have all of that available to us. And then again, we probably want to do some prompts on here. So we might want to prompt on our categories, and we'll just add that to our page. And then with our customers, maybe we want to add the state code out there to be able to select on as well. So again, we'll just drag and drop those onto the dashboard itself, make that available, and I'll save that out there. I could give it a nice name. We'll just leave it called dashboard in this case. And so very quickly, we have our dashboard up. So we have that nice image of the U.S. here. And then again, our chart, which I'm able to drill down on if I'd like to, or if I'd like to, I can switch this over maybe to a different view, just like we saw earlier. Or maybe switch this over to the table, and then if we'd like to, we can even filter that down just a little bit, and maybe even select a couple of different states if we want to do that too. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you guys.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's Brad, it's our opportunity, I think, to maybe have a little bit of a conversation about the topics that Matt just ran through and some of the points I made. Matt, thanks for the demonstration. Brad, are you online and ready for this portion?
That I am.
Fantastic. I'm going to start with the hard ones, and Matt just sort of touched on a few of them, but I made a point up front of talking about that, some area for improvement in the space in general, not specific to Birst, but implementation still is a big issue for a lot of folks that are in the market. Analytic power remains an issue for a lot of folks in the market. And, of course, handling and managing data integration in general. And you kind of touched on a little bit of it up front. I think Matt sort of flew through a few of those functions, but I think these three topics are worth sort of exploring, especially the one about, kind of speed to value. I think that's an area that the buzz of cloud got way out ahead of the capabilities of many in the space. So would you characterize that as true from your viewpoint, and where's Birst on, worrying about implementation speeds and time to value?
Yeah, it's fundamental to what we're all about. As I mentioned before, our belief, given that we're BI veterans, we go back a long time, is that there are some hard problems that you can try to deny or pretend that they don't exist, but you still have to solve. And so our approach has been, let's bring automation to the process of BI, as opposed to just trying to simplify the problems that we deal with. I think many of the earlier vendors or some of the other cloud vendors tried to solve the easier parts of BI, the front end, the dashboarding pieces, and sort of neglected the more challenging and messier bits around the data and data integration and how do you build analytical data sets. Some have tried to plug in low-level ETL tools that don't really have much to do with the cloud in them, and so therefore there really isn't much cloud about them. Or they've simply pushed that back to the customers on-premise, in which case, if it's not really all done in the cloud, what's the value of it? Our philosophy has been, whether or not it's cloud, the value prop should be to take that end-to-end life cycle and try to make it faster, and the way you do that is by automating many of the steps. And so one of the things that we focused on, I think uniquely, is how does one build that analytical data set, that data mart or data warehouse, how does one bring automation to that component? If you can bring data in and integrate it from different sources, more quickly, do less plumbing in the process. You're going to be more agile in the process. I will also say the interesting thing about cloud is sometimes people have expected that cloud not only should be easier, it should be trivial or already done. I think that has been a condition that we've had to be careful with in the industry. That it's one thing to go from 12 months to 2 months in deployment, but taking that to 2 days is probably unrealistic. So making sure that our customers understand that it's not even just about the tool, it's about understanding their data, it's understanding the process, it's understanding the how they're going to consume it internally. And some of those things you have to solve no matter what tool you use, whether it's the cloud or on-premise. And I think having a sober conversation about that is the most healthy thing there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think certain members of the tech industry press didn't do anybody any favors in the early days of Cloud BI by oversimplifying and I think making people's expectations, frankly, unrealistic. It's not magic, but it is a highly valuable way of doing business, and it's got a ton of value to it for certain. But once again, it's not something that you can implement and do in an hour versus as you pointed out, a few months. Across the board on all three of these, once again, sort of the data management, the implementation side, and the analytic power aspects of it. I mentioned up front that I'm a fan of pure plays, and you guys are custom built from the bottom up to take advantage of the cloud. I've got to imagine that I know that a lot of your data management capabilities have been baked into your solutions since the early days. I think it's across the bear for a lot of the traditional guys who are trying to retrofit their way into the cloud. Do you agree with that? And do you see more opportunity for you to be more agile and inventive in what you're doing just based on the platform?
Absolutely. The thing about the industry has been around a long time, and people got used to separating different layers and buying things from different vendors and having different processes. And so even the consumption patterns in organizations grew up around these fragmented tool sets. So on the one hand, there's a huge opportunity to create an integrated tool set that raises the abstraction level from low-level ETL to something that's really more around how do I do something quickly. We had to do that for the cloud. It wasn't our belief that just simply providing a dashboard in the cloud would be enough value. I think that's where we might differ from other folks who believe that just the visualization alone is sufficient. That's never really been our belief. The interesting thing for us is actually when we started out doing this, we started providing these tool sets as a result of doing it for ourselves. When we started to do initial implementations for our customers, we were actually providing applications, and our goal was to make our own people much more efficient so that we could literally have one person instead of 3 to 5 and scale that out. And I think that we built it for ourselves first has really helped us. And the cloud initially was challenging because we had to solve these problems in order to be able to solve our customers' problems. And some of our on-premise brethren just haven't had to do that. So I think just by nature of the history, we've been forced to deal with things that are different. It does cause us to have to evangelize a little bit more, that maybe there is a different way for doing some of these things. But I think right now, given the last couple of years, the industry is much more open to accepting different ways of solving these problems.
So when I said up front that a lot of the innovation in the market's been customer-driven, I should have included in-house needs as well, apparently. That's a great way to get new functionality into your system for sure.
Absolutely.
So, I glossed over security today, and you and I have been talking cloud a long time, and I know that years ago when we would have discussions, we'd start out at security, but it really, I think security hand in hand with trust has really evolved around cloud technology in general, and certainly around cloud business intelligence. What's your take on that? And if you want, feel free to tell the audience where you're at from a secure standpoint. But I'm almost thinking of it more as a culture issue at this point than a technology issue. But I'm sure you can speak to both.
It's both, and I think the security is used as sort of as a general term, and actually people might mean a couple of different things, some of which are more legitimate, I think, than others. I think the security piece itself, you always come back to the analogy of what's safer, putting money under your pillow or putting it in the bank. The bank is built for that purpose. So it's going to be inherently more secure, and the types of security policies that we have to adhere to as an organization are generally speaking much higher than what our customers do, and it's usually a superset across all of our customers. Many of our customers are security companies, so there's a lot of things that we need to do. And generally considering that most security breaches are actually generated from employees internally within a company that have vested interest in that data, putting it in a vendor who doesn't have a vested interest, one could make the argument is actually a much safer move. But in addition to that, the amount of data that's already in the cloud is growing dramatically. It used to be that pretty much all the systems that people used were on-premise. But even 15 years ago, people were moving payroll systems and your HR data. That was already moving to the cloud. And now we're seeing a consistent replatforming of the enterprise to cloud-based applications. So if your enterprise data is already there, or a chunk of it, now it really isn't a discussion about whether the cloud is okay. I think that's sort of done. The question is really more about how do I live in a hybrid world where some of my data is in the cloud and some of it's on-prem, and can I effectively move between them? And I think there's been some confusion historically that if I go cloud, I have to have everything in the cloud. I can't deal with data on-prem. And that's held some folks back because there is a perception that if I have certain bits of data on-premise, I have more control and more flexibility over that, and that's probably true in some cases. And so really our challenge as cloud vendors has been to live in that hybrid world where we allow you to put some data in Birst and we manage that data in the cloud. We also should be able to peek into and leverage data that's on-prem without moving into the cloud and provide a hybrid solution, because I do believe data is moving to the cloud. That there's no question about that, and that's where people are going to outsource infrastructure, much like they outsourced power generation. But it's going to be a long time before the vast majority of it's in the cloud. A lot of data is going to be on-prem for a very long time. So we have to live in that hybrid world and make sure we can handle it. And I think the ability to do that is a lot better than I think people generally realize.
Well, when you and I agree with you. Our research shows that hybrid right now is the most popular implementation style for our customers. There is this sort of need to control data behind the firewall and in the cloud, and they see advantages to both, just like you just said. It brings about sort of an interesting thought from my side, which going back to this whole maturity theme of today and talking about Cloud 2.0 and where things are headed and so on, it brings about how the enterprise adopts this stuff. And I think for a very long time, and you even mentioned that you have a good footing in the SMB market, but at the same time you're serving enterprise customers as well. Our research indicates that enterprise customers are adopting cloud even faster than some SMB sectors. But at that time, they're putting new kind of, new responsibility on some of the cloud providers and some of the solution providers around service level agreements and their ability to have certain uptime and to perform at certain speeds. And, when you start getting into these complex worlds where part of the data is out in the cloud, part of it's behind a firewall, and you've got SLAs, are you, in fact, at Birst, addressing that type of a relationship with enterprise customers? Are you taking on performance risk with them and making assurances and delivering at that level? Because I'd like to ask that question because the early on days of the cloud, we didn't see much of that from many vendors, but I think it's starting to be a growing trend.
We have to be careful with analytics. It's one of those interesting areas, and anybody who's been in this knows this, that our customers span 7 orders of magnitude of data volume differences. Some folks are megabytes and some folks are terabytes. They span several orders of magnitudes of scope. Maybe it's 5 tables, maybe it's 500 tables. So it's hard to put an SLA one size fits all in terms of performance on every end user query, and I don't think any BI vendor on-premise would do that either. What we do look to do, and this is what's important, is to put SLAs around the infrastructure and provide the same types of guarantees that an IT organization or technology organization would have to provide internally, which is, do I have the system uptime and the system reliability that's necessary? To the extent that somebody puts something in our cloud, do we have the disaster recovery, the backup, the failover, the clustering, those types of things that people expect of an enterprise need? Do we have the connectivity, the bandwidth, those sorts of things? Yes. We work with our customers around those sorts of things. And do we provide the mechanisms such that people can reach performance thresholds based on scaling of infrastructure. So you should be able to, as my data volumes increase, put more infrastructure behind your cloud instance so that you can meet the performance thresholds that you want. And that's something maybe some of the earlier vendors or earlier ways people couldn't do, but that's definitely something that we put a lot of energy around.
Good answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was my plan at about 10 to the top of the hour to start bringing in some questions from the audience, and as if on cue, we've started to receive some. So if you haven't sent yours in already, please feel free to do so, but I'm going to tackle the one that's on the screen, Brad, in front of both of us. It says, this looks a little complicated. It's from Nick in the audience to implement, and he's referencing Birst. What kind of IT capabilities does an organization need to have to successfully implement the solution? And does it tend to rule out? And I'm assuming Nick is talking about very small companies, but I think at the core of this, it's a good question. What type of capabilities should a company have in order to engage with your company to get something done?
That's a really good question. The thing about BI and analytics is it's a tiered approach, and it's one of those things where I wish there was a single answer, but really what we've attempted to provide with Birst, and I don't know if you folks caught this quickly when Matt was doing his demonstration, is we have a couple tiers of our product. One level of our product is the warehousing advanced business analytics version of our product, which allows folks to do very sophisticated things. And the goal there is to take someone who is somewhat BI knowledgeable and make them significantly more productive, not to take somebody who knows nothing and make them BI professionals. So there is some training and some some experience that needs to go with that advanced business analytics piece, and we provide that training, both CBTs and coursework to do that. But we also have a discovery version of our product, which is more akin to the discovery products that I mentioned earlier, and those really, if someone has conventional business analytics skills, like Excel, those sorts of things, that's generally, more than sufficient to be able to handle that tier of the product. The other thing I would say is that, if analytics is strategic for you as an organization, you don't necessarily have to procure a whole person to be able to dedicate towards the effort. The nice thing about the cloud and services organizations in general is they allow you to buy kind of fractional resources. And one of the services we provide at Birst is what we call our Business Analytics Competency Center, which is rented resources on an as-needed basis to be able to augment your team, but at a fractional rate compared to what you'd have to do if you had to hire an individual yourself. We also have a growing partner community of several dozen partners geographically dispersed around the U.S. and around the world who can also work with you as well. So there are a lot of options for organizations to dip a toe in, build up competency without necessarily having to build any sort of organizational infrastructure on their side.
I'm going to segue from that answer, and it was a good one, towards one that we just got in from the audience. And I think, Brad, this tends to talk in terms that you and I might call fast start templates or things that help customers get off the ground quickly. The specific question was, how much do Birst customers have to build out themselves? Does Birst come with standard capabilities, or do customers have to build from scratch? Help the folks understand a little bit about how you fast-track people in and what type of things you can do to help them move faster.
It's both. So our fundamental philosophy at Birst has been one size does not fit all. So I don't believe, and the folks here in our experience, I think the industry has borne this out over the last 15 years, is it's impossible for us to pre-build every metric and every exact dashboard and report that you're going to need, because we don't know your management team, we don't know how you report, we don't know your strategic business needs at any given point in time. All of that stuff will change how you measure your business, and two different management teams in nearly identical companies are going to measure their business differently. So our approach has been, let's bring automation to the fore so we can take your business needs and get to business measurement more quickly through automation. That said, even on top of automation, people do tend to use Birst in conjunction with specific anchor applications that they work with. And what we do and our partners do as well, is prepackaged content around many of those applications. So, for example, Salesforce, NetSuite, Marketo, other types of products that are out there, cloud, but also even some on-premise ERP solutions. we do package what we call solution accelerators, which are essentially pre-built data models, reports, dashboards, those sorts of things, which get you a large percentage of the way there. And really what you're then adding to it are the things that you've then custom configured in your home applications and bringing them into the Birst environment so that those are also reflected as well. And the implementation times on those are significantly reduced over starting with a blank canvas.
I've got another one here from Lauren in the audience, pretty straightforward, and maybe you can comment on this. This, again, is to staffing and IT support and things. She says, do all of your customers have dedicated analytic departments? And I'm sure not all of them do, but what's your experience there with the analytic expertise coming from your clients and the resources they apply?
Yeah, like I was saying before, absolutely not. There does need to be somebody who's a business owner of analytics and who appreciates how analytics is going to drive business value. There needs to be some sense of ownership in a company for them to be successful. This is just a best practice in general, independent of Birst. But we have many customers who do not have who do not have BI experience or dedicated analytics groups. Either they're using discovery platform and business analyst expertise is all that's really necessary, or they're augmenting their expertise with rented resources that can provide that additional extra bit to do some more sophisticated things if they want to do that.
Excellent answer. Got one here just along the line, again, of what I spoke about early on, which is businesses' needs to kind of impact cost, capital, and operational, and that's sort of been a mantra of the space for quite some time. Do you see that as important as it has been in the past, and is Birst able to make an impact there for its customers and clients?
Shaun, can you repeat that again? I didn't.
Along the lines of cost. And not so much licensing fees and things, but capital and operational savings that we tend to see from cloud implementations has always been a hot topic. And as I mentioned earlier, it's something that drives business people towards the cloud. I thought I'd give you an opportunity to maybe comment on how you can lend impact to that area if you are, and how you might go about doing it.
We definitely do. I mean, a cloud service is an alternative to investing in capital infrastructure yourself and maintaining and managing that. That's a lot of what the cloud's about, is making that infrastructure a utility. Having an accidental data warehouse is something that most people didn't really realize was possible, but they can now do that with cloud technology that's out there. So there's the ability to negotiate between CapEx and OpEx, and also if you're leveraging multi-tenancy at scale, the rates that we can provide services to customers should be better than what they can do themselves. And there are even some extreme cases where the differences are dramatic. If you look at our partnership with Amazon Redshift, for example, just at the storage infrastructure itself, I know most IT organizations will say, "Oh, storage is free, disk is free. We have all that stuff. All the computers are free. We already have them." The reality is it's not really free, and they do have to pay and procure and all that sort of stuff. And if you tried to build a data warehouse, you would incur a number of costs. And if you just look at what Amazon has done to the cost of storage at $1,000 a terabyte a year, there's some real cost advantages that you can have, and almost to the point where when you're really comparing the cost of cloud to on-prem, CFOs really do need to ask the question, why wouldn't I go with cloud? Because a lot of the on-premise solutions are really designed. They were priced initially for very large enterprise selling environments that required, it's like going to Tiffany. You're not going to get that ring cheap, no matter how nice it is. You can go down the block though, and that same ring is probably there at a more custom jeweler at a much better price. And I think the cloud has, because of its infrastructure, it's designed to provide the same level of services at better economics.
Makes sense. Makes good sense. Hey, the hour went fast as it always does. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, Brad.
My pleasure as well, Shaun. Appreciate it.
And want to thank Matt for the great demo, and for Birst for making today's program available. There's some good links here in front of you, folks. Good way to get your hand on a report that talks about EMA's comparative analysis of Birst and other BI platforms, and some other great links to demos and so on. I'd like to thank today's audience for being with us, and as Raleigh said up front, you'll all get an email from EMA tomorrow with links back to an on-demand portion of this. We did get a couple of other questions just at the last minute here today, and we'll try to get you answers of those questions as well. And with that said, thank you very much for being here today, and I wish all of you a great afternoon.